Hello, everyone. I am Christa Desir. I'm one of the editors at Sourcebooks, and I am so thrilled to have everyone here today for our Bookstore Romance Day, which is like in the romance world, this is our big major holiday. It's the solstice of great romantic holidays. So I love this day, and I love that you all are here with me to talk about rom-coms. So I am going to start by having you all go around and introduce yourselves and then tell us a little bit about your most recent book and give us like maybe a couple sentence pitch on it so that we all know why we should buy all of them. Okay, Suzanne, I'm gonna start since I'm doing my Hollywood Squares thing. Suzanne's to my left, so I'm gonna go with Suzanne. Why don't you start?
Hi there. So excited to talk about The Perfect Escape. It came out in April. I'm a Korean American writer who was born and raised in Tennessee and currently live in Los Angeles, California. This story is about Nate Kim. He is a Korean American teenager and he meets his dream girl at the zombie escape room where he works. They both realize they have a desperate need for money, so they enter a survivalist competition with a huge cash prize. Two teenagers surviving the elements for a whole weekend. What could possibly go wrong? So that is this book. It is out now.
Oh, man, really? Like, take my money. That's fantastic. Okay, Miranda.
Oh, hi, everybody. My most recent book is called 4 Days of You and Me. It is about Alex and Lulu, who are sworn enemies the freshman year of high school. And the book sort of takes place over 4 years of high school, showing all their ups and downs of their relationship. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Miranda Kenneally. This is my ninth romantic comedy with Sourcebooks. And I'm also from Tennessee. And all my books take place in Tennessee. So
awesome. Anne-Marie.
My name is Anne-Marie Walker. I also grew up in Tennessee. We have a theme going.
I've never been to Tennessee. That's my theme. Sorry.
My newest release is Happy Singles Day. It comes out in January. It is my 8th book. It is the fourth rom-com I've written. It's about a professional organizer who books a room to celebrate Singles Day, which is the day after Valentine's Day, the anti-Valentine's Day, at a beachfront B&B that turns out to be more pig pen than resort. But the head swine is a crusty, albeit gorgeous single father whose sister actually reactivated the listing without his knowledge. So it's forced proximity, it's enemies to lovers, it's opposites attract.
Oh, good fun tropes. Yay. I can't wait for that one. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Morgenthaler. This is my debut, The Tourist Attraction. I'm also from Tennessee. And The Tourist Attraction is a Alaskan set rom-com where we have a very grumpy diner owner who cannot stand all of these rich, entitled tourists that keep showing up in his town. And he finds himself actually falling in love with one of the tourists that shows up. And it's kind of like if you take Gilmore Girls, Luke from Gilmore Girls meets Northern Exposure. So it's fun.
Annabeth.
Hi, I am not from Tennessee. I am coming to you from Oregon today, and I have to give a shout out for Bookstore Romance Day for Jan's Paperbacks in Beaverton and Riverdog Books in Portland. They've both been terrific supporters of this book, which is my first with Sourcebooks. I have a bunch of other LGBTQ titles out. This is Conventionally Yours, which is my road trip gamer romance. It is everything I love. It's forced proximity. It's two guys, they're rival gamers, they're forced to be on a road trip together, and they have only one bed, they have the close proximity, they have a big convention they're heading to. I love big fan conventions, so this is just kind of everything I love in one book, which is really fun.
I love how all of you like immediately went to your tropes. and like how that is, like, exactly, obviously rom-coms are really tropey and romance can be really tropey. And so I'm going to ask you, and now I'm going to go like different directions. But I'm going to ask you, tell me, what is your favorite trope to read and to write? And then maybe, is there something, I guess, to add to that, is there something that makes you decide a little bit like what's the right trope to include in your book? So if you're planning your next book, like, are you just like, I'm going to work around the trope, or are you like, I have this idea and let me figure out if I can kind of get these tropes in? So, hey, Sarah, let's start with you.
Hi. I love the friends to lovers tropes. And I really, really love grumpy hero or shy hero. So you're probably going to get either a grumpy hero or a shy hero. You can get a lot of like sarcasm type wordplay back and forth with my books. I like that a lot. And the guy next door, I like the guy next door. And I think that with mine, when I write a book, I pants the heck out of it. Like there's no plotting with my stuff. And then I kind of Frankenbook everything back together at the end of it. And so a lot of times I just pick a hero's name or a heroine's name. And then like, once I know their name, their personality kind of comes together. And then I throw them together and then see what happens when I throw them together. So I actually don't plot out the trope. The trope just kind of happens after I create the characters.
I'm always so fascinated by people's like different processes with that, because I definitely know a lot of authors who are like, I don't know, the character just tells me that's how it goes. And then there are some people who are so methodical about how they do it. So I'm always super fascinated. This is like one of my favorite questions. Annabeth, let's go to you.
Okay, so I love Rivals. Obviously, this has rivals in it. I love Grumpy and Sunshine. I love that kind of opposites attract. I love a lot of opposites attract. I like Age Gap, too. I like all sorts of great tropes. And Friends to Lovers, like Sarah was saying, that's a great one, too. But what I like to do is I'm the opposite of Sarah. I like to start with a list. I'm very much a plotter. And so for this one, I knew I wanted to do gamers. And I was like, well, what do I like? I love tabletop gaming. So I was like, okay, if I have gamers, what tropes do I want to get? What are my favorite tropes that could work here? And so I made a list. I wanted Rivals. I wanted a convention. I wanted Grumpy and Sunshine. I wanted the opposites attract. And so I just started kind of going down, what tropes can I get in there? And then it was like, oh, we could have a road trip. We could have forced proximity. We could have only one bed. And so I just kind of and I do that for a lot of my books. I'm like, I have a premise. And then I'm like, well, how can we get some of my favorite parts in there? And that kind of starts the plot rolling. And from there, I plot and I come up with my scene cards and we get a book.
Awesome. So pantser plotter. Suzanne, where do you land on this with your tropes and all of these things?
I'm the ones that are in the middle that try to be hybrid. So plotster or plantser, I guess I'm buried between those. I usually have a premise and then try to write a like longer than, it's not quite a synopsis and not quite a pitch. Again, it's somewhere in between, to figure out what that key relationship conflict will be. And in figuring that out for this book, it was Friends to Lovers, but I also like to play around with tropes. I'm not usually a straight and narrow, like, it's so obvious what I'm trying to do with the story. So with this one, it's Friends to Lovers, but then they're in a competition. And then later on, they're actually competitors. So that ends up kind of mixing things up a bit. So they end up being friends to lovers to enemies to lovers by the end. Plus all the other, like, I guess, sub tropes of forced proximity and there's only one bed once they're in the competition. So I don't know. I just like to experiment with things and hopefully like pick one dominant conflict. And then from there, figure out if there's any scenes or things later on that will add more conflict in a reasonable way to make their journey a little bit more interesting.
Awesome. Miranda.
Sorry, I keep going on mute. I'm afraid my dog is going to start barking and ruin our panel.
Same.
So So that's why I keep going on mute. So I guess I'm a big fan of the, the best, the older brother's best friend trope. That's probably one of my favorites. But when it comes to writing, I've had the great opportunity to write so many books already, that I've been able to put a lot of my favorite tropes into a lot of my books. So I've been able to do the best friends to lovers. I've been able to do enemies to lovers. I've been able to do the older brother's best friend. And it's different for all my books. Every single book I write is completely different. It feels like I'm learning to write all over again with every single book I write. Sometimes I'm afraid, my editor thinks, oh, she can't write for anything because my first drafts are so bad. But the way I do it sometimes, though, there have been a couple of instances where I have been said, I think I'm going to write that trope, and then I've formed the story around it. But I've only done that a few times, but it was fun.
I love that you're even talking a little bit about how, and I think everyone's in different places in their career, but how like you do something new every single time. Like, you start here and you're like, oh, what if I try this? Or what if I do that? And I think that in some ways keeps a lot of freshness to the writing. So that's very cool. Anne-Marie.
So I also have been able to write several different tropes, the brother's best friend, friends to lovers. I like the secret identity. I did that one time with an undercover prince, but my favorite is enemies to lovers. It's just, you can be so over the top. There's so much comedic gold and like clashing these people together. And I feel like that the payoff when they get together is like fireworks then, because they've just had so many sparks in so many other ways. But I always start a book with the meet cute, or in the enemy's case, like the meet awful. I always can see where and it might not happen until the second or third chapter, but where the couple meets and how they meet. That's the first thing that starts me writing a book. I see a couple meeting and I figure out what their why and their story. And then from there I figure out where we're going to end. And then I kind of start to wing it in between. I know how we're going to end and how we're going to start. And, I love doing like with Happy Singles Day, she's an uptight, professional organizer, and he's let his wife passed away, and he's let the place just turn into a mess, and she's staying there and she can't help herself. Like she goes into the pantry and she finds herself rearranging, putting all the beverages on one shelf and stuff, because she's just compulsive about it. And so there's a good opportunities to bring different personalities together.
That is actually a really perfect segue into my next question for you all, which is a little bit about how, so here we're talking tropes and we're talking like meet cute and that kind of thing. And some of these things, like people could say, oh, this is a little formulaic. How do you keep these rom-coms fresh, unique? I mean, you all have such amazing hooks that I feel like that we really need to have a discussion about hooks, which is sort of like a different thing, but maybe that sort of informs how you answer this question. But how do you feel like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to bring to this so that it's really stands out, it's really, fresh and unique? Annabeth, let's start with you.
For me, it's very character driven, but also so you have the trope, and then I think to myself, what are the reader expectations for this trope? And then how can I spin it? Like, so if the expectation is, oh, there's only one bed, there's going to be a big love story, a big love scene at that moment. What if there's not? What if something else happens? And so I like to think about those expectations and then how you can give them what they want, but also something fresh and new. And like, you have your base trope of grumpy and sunshine, but what if your grumpy person is more neurodiverse or has differences that we don't see a lot in books? And so what if your sunshine person has an illness or something? And just different ways that kind of inform the character that add a new layer to an existing trope. But I really like playing with those little twists. That's just so much fun for me.
Yeah, I love hearing that about how when you flesh out the character, everything becomes so much fresher and really unique to each one. Suzanne, you spoke a little bit about that too, with how you kind of turn tropes on its head.
Yes. So in addition to kind of picking multiple tropes and trying to change it around a bit, I do like to write about nerds finding new love. So I don't think there's many stories that really talk about the awkwardness and anxiety from a nerd's perspective. And I really want to see nerds fall in love. I think that that's something that you don't see enough. And I think a lot of people can relate to the awkwardness of just trying to meet somebody for the first time and saying the wrong thing and actually, you know, stumbling and being clumsy. And those are actually real things that happen to real people. So I tend to gravitate toward writing stories that are like that, where they're funny in terms of the setup and then also trying to bring humor, but relatability to the actual relationship. I also like to write characters that are Korean American, so I usually go for turning stereotypes on their heads as well. So in this particular book, Nate Kim, he loves zombies and he works at a zombie escape room. He wants to be a big business guy and get out of his financial situation, where he's a scholarship kid, and he's just so different and feels like a fish out of water at his own school. But at the same time, he is athletic in not the ways you expect. He's very resourceful and kind of quirky and funny. And I tried to just make sure that I picked a character that you wouldn't look at him and say, oh, that's, you know, your typical Asian American character you see in the movies or on TV. He definitely has a different feel and a different personality.
Awesome. Miranda, how are you keeping well, you're at book 9, so how are we keeping that fresh?
Well, for me, you know, it's, you know, like Annabeth said, it's all about the character, but I would say I try to throw everything into making that character like you're the copy editor, Christa. Tell me, is it the realist or the most real? I'm
going to go with the most real. The most real, yeah.
Okay, the most real, you know, character I can come up with, you know, to include quirks, but also what drives them, what do they want, you know, really getting, you know, really deep into who they are as a character. And I'll say, you know, every book I've written, that story, I'm sure, has been told before, every single one. Like, my plots are not revolutionary by any means. I might put characters in new situations. Of course, I go for that really, really big hook. But when you're actually looking at my plots, the stories have all been told before. But you know, one thing I've been really proud of is how can I make these characters brand new people? And you know, I've actually had, you know, reviews that have said, you know, this plot is completely cliche, but because the characters felt so real, you know, it was enjoyable. It was an enjoyable book. And so that's kind of how I like to, you know, think about keeping it fresh is making them, you know, real people. So, and thank you for the copy editing help. So.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Anne-Marie.
I agree with what she was just saying. We're all kind of rewriting the same 8 tropes. Like, there's only, you know, we can't really reinvent the wheel. But like previously was said, I like to take the cliches, if you will, and find a way to tweak it and find some humor in there if I can. One example is I wrote a book where there was a scene on the Orient Express. They were in Europe, and I'm like, I kind of want to do the Orient Express, but God, could it get more cliche than romance on the Orient Express? But then I started watching videos of people shot on the Orient Express, and I'm like, this really isn't that romantic. Even in a suite, you have those like Pullman bunk beds that fold down off. So I thought there's some comedy to be found here. So I took like a cliche situation and made it like just a train wreck. Bad choice of words. So
that makes sense. Yeah, Sarah.
Well, I think too, it's important that you're having fun with it. So, you know, there's so many cliche things in tourist attraction, but like, I just tried to go all in. Like, if it was something silly, I just went all in on the silly. If it was something, if I've got people barfing and dolphins chumming the water because people barfed on a horrible whale watching trip, and it's just, I don't know, like, you go into it and just think, this is whatever makes you happy when you're writing it. If you're enjoying what you're doing, if you're laughing as you're typing it, if you put your own, if you at the end of the day, when you've finished writing and you're happy with what you have in front of you, I think that in itself makes it a little fresher just because you have that enthusiasm behind it. So with me, I just go all in, no matter how cliche or goofy it is.
I love that, though. I think that's fantastic. I think that's in some ways how you really get readers hooked, because they're like, you put everything out there, you don't pull your punches, I guess.
Yeah.
You don't pull your rom-com punches.
Okay.
Okay, is everyone doing okay? We're all
Yep.
good? Okay, fantastic. I have a few more questions. One, and this goes a little bit off of what Sarah was talking about in terms of like laughing while you're writing or those kind of things, is like, so, I mean, we're living in kind of a crap show right now in the world for many, many reasons. And I'm really curious if that has impacted your writing, impacted your reading, and if that's the case, what's your workaround? Are there things that you're finding as a workaround? Is writing therapeutic for you? Or is it like, how can I be funny right now when like we're in this, Or was it like, Kamala, excellent. Okay, I can get some words in. I mean, I have no idea. So I'm really curious, like, are there things that you feel like, okay, this is how I'm dealing with this world? Suzanne, let's start with you. Oh, you got to unmute yourself. Yeah. There you go.
I'm okay. Oh, thank you. For me, it actually took about a month for me to start thinking about writing again. Once the pandemic had hit, I really couldn't figure out how to just function in terms of just the work-life balance, plus the, just having a kid at home and my husband's working at home. It just was completely an upheaval at home. Once that settled down and I could get back to figuring out what I needed to do, I was on deadline for my next book that has been turned in, thank goodness. And I found that once I started writing that book, it was a little hard to get started, but I realized that when I finished the book, it's a little bit lighter hearted than this current book. I really wanted to make sure that it was just it had a lot of silly moments and a lot of just, I was really looking for a book that would be, this is called The Perfect Escape, but I wanted to make sure that the next book was also Perfect Escape. So there was no heaviness to the next book at all. And I think that was what I wanted to write. And I think that's what people will want to read next year. So that's how it affected my immediate state of things. But I really had to just jump in and figure out how to write. I didn't have a goal for like a number of pages or a number of words when I first started. It was just to get a paragraph down, and then the next day like another paragraph and a half. So, or maybe I'll take this time off and listen to podcasts or something. But I just needed to get back into thinking about writing, even if that meant reading, consuming other media, with the idea that I'm just sort of relaxing my brain and looking for ideas. Mm-hmm. But in the end, I got back on track, thank goodness, but it took a while.
Yeah. Miranda?
Well, so back in 2017, like right after the election, I had such a hard time writing. Like I didn't want to admit to people at the time, like I just couldn't write. Like I couldn't write after the election. And I spent most of 2017 doing hardly anything, to be honest. And it wasn't until like, a year or so after that, I was talking to somebody. I think it was actually one of the editors at Sourcebooks. And I said, I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't write. And he said, well, you're not the only one. I've heard that from so many people. And I had been really beating myself up, for a long time because, I wasn't, as prolific. I wasn't able to get those words out. So it was really kind of comforting to hear, there were lots of people who were in my same boat. This time around, this new sort of, crisis here in our country, I felt like when it first started, I was actually under deadline, and I was really churning out the book, and it was due at the end of April, and I just felt like I had to keep going. Like I didn't feel like I had any sort of choice. So I somehow I managed to just keep going. But once it was done, I haven't, I'll tell you, it's been very hard to find any new ideas and get my brain to focus. I have to be in the right frame of mind to figure out what I want to do next. So I guess what I would say is people shouldn't, you're not alone if you feel this way. It's okay. You'll get back to it when you feel comfortable. And you should do things that make you feel comfortable at this time. I'll say I haven't watched as much TV in years as I've watched in the past several months, but it's been good for me because, it lets me look at different kinds of plots and characters and relax and, just treat myself well, because that's what you have to do during times like this. So.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. Anne-Marie.
Well, just like everybody else has said, we had a lot of emotions and interruptions in our household. My children are older, but that meant their lives all came to a stop and they all had to come home. So what was about to be a completely empty nest became a full house. That was challenging for them and me. One of my problems is feeling like a fish out of water because I have written every book at Starbucks. That's my go-to place. I sit there and I can crank away and it's just too quiet. There's too many distractions. Even when the kids are all out of the house, I can't focus. So that was kind of tough. And I was lucky initially because I had copy edits on 2 books going on. So it gave me like a task-oriented career project that I could work on that wasn't quite so creative minded, but then it was time to start a brand new book. And that's always hard, even under the best of circumstances, like being going. I need to write a note to myself when I hit like 40,000 words, be like, to yourself, it gets easier now, but yeah, so it was definitely hard to like start to create these people, but I did a lot of the same stuff. I watched a lot of rom-com movies and tried to not put the Today Show on before I started writing in the morning, things like that. Now I've hit the point where I'm far enough in that it is becoming an escape. So that's good.
Yeah, I love all these life hacks. Feel free to throw in your little life hacks. I love the do a paragraph before you turn on the Today Show. That's a great idea. Sarah.
A life hack for me is I try not to check social media before 10:30. And that way I have like a morning where I can focus on whatever I have to write and work on without whatever's happening that day in my brain. Because once it's in your brain, it's in your brain. Mm-hmm. And then I set a second alarm to shut off social media by 5:30. And every once in a while, I'll break that habit, but just kind of keeping it contained has helped my peace of mind. And it's actually, when it helps your peace of mind, it helps your creativity, I think. Mm-hmm. But I did luck out because I've had a lot of edits due. This is my busiest pandemic I've ever had. And so I actually just finished proofreads on the last book of New Springs, book 3 of New Springs yesterday. So I've pretty much been working editing nonstop since all this started. So I haven't had to draft much. And that's what I'm actually shifting into starting next week is trying to draft. And I guess I'm just trying to keep my expectations for myself low. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that are just cranking out the words right now. And if I get 50 on Monday, I'm giving myself a thumbs up. If I get 500 or 1,000 or whatever ends up being, I think writing, so much of it comes from inside of you, and you can't hold yourself to normal expectations in abnormal times. So whatever I get, I'm gonna just try to be happy with it and eat some chocolate chips and be like, hey, words happened.
Yeah, listen, I love all this grace. This is perfect. Of course, you're all romance people, so you understand grace more than, but I love that because I think that's exactly right. Like, how else can you go about it? Annabeth.
I think, you said it, you've got to be gentle with yourself. You have to be gentle with yourself right now and just kind of radical self-care. Like, what do
Yeah.
you need today in order to just be able to function? And if that's a walk, if that's good, nutritious food, what do you need for you? And asking myself that has really helped me the last couple of weeks, kind of that radical self-care. What do I need today? But I also use kind of a life hack. I use Pacemaker, which helps me to kind of see how much I need to get each day. And it adds a normalcy that I had before, because I work a day job and I used to have kind of a very set pattern for my days. So certain days were writing days and certain days were days that I went to campus. And so I've used Pacemaker to kind of say, okay, this is the goal for today, and it's a little goal. We're just going to do this chunk. We're not going to look at the whole 80,000 words. We're just going to do today's little chunk of edits or little chunk of words. And I'm also a big fan of little rewards. You get 25 words, you get an M&M. You get 250 words, you get to look at social media. Like, if that's what it takes to get you writing, don't say I'm going to get 5,000 words and then I'm going to get an episode. Like, 500 words and then you get 10 minutes of the episode. Like, little rewards, because it comes back to being really gentle and gracious with yourself and what you need. And you know what you need to get started, whether it's quiet or noise or whatever, but just reward yourself for that getting started. Like Sarah said, if you can get 25 words out, you've got 2 sentences, you're good to go.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Hey, so Miranda, and actually now everyone's going to get to do this. Miranda, you said that you've been watching more TV than you ever have. I too am in that space, and actually it's super delightful for me because I haven't watched TV in so long that there are like things that everyone talks about forever. I'm like, oh, I don't know that. What's that? And now I'm like, I know what this supernatural is. These brothers are adorable, as if I'm just figuring this out. But I am wondering if you all have like a fave, since we're on Bookstore Romance Day, what's your fave rom-com lately, or your favorite, rom-com TV or movie, or things that you're like, oh, or even like the comfort rom-com, like, and listen, it's just between us and then anyone else who's watching this, but yeah, definitely have it. Okay, so Miranda, let's start with you.
Well, let's see. My favorite rom-com book I read this year is called The Roommate. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but it is about this woman. She's from Connecticut and she decides to move across the country to LA for this guy. And when she gets there, she ends up not living with him as she had planned, but with his roommate, who turns out to be a porn star. And it's just great. I really enjoyed it. And so she's very type A, and and he's a hot porn star.
Yeah.
Let's see. I really liked, and I was way behind the times on this. I finally watched Never Have I Ever. I thought that was really funny on Netflix. Yeah. Oh, and I really liked The Babysitter's Club. I don't know that's a rom-com, but I'm going to say it is, because, like, Logan and Marianne are very cute. So, I liked that. I guess, my favorite movies that are rom-coms, Pretty Woman is one of my favorites, and Clueless, obviously. Let's see, I like Hitch. There's so many I like. I'll tell you what I don't like. What I realized lately is Never Been Kissed. I loved that movie when I was growing up. I loved it, but now I think it's so creepy. That teacher, she's like, with the teacher likes her, and she's pretending to be a high school student. So anyway, this is causing lots of fights between me and my husband, because he thinks it's still a good movie, and I think it's great.
Oh, so I felt the same way. I actually watched it with my 18-year-old daughter for the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cute. You're going to love it. And then she was like halfway through it, she's like, this is awful, Mom, gross. Like, she was so appalled by it. So Gen Z saving us all, apparently. Anne-Marie, Do you have and we should actually ask, since we had this as an audience question too, if you have a favorite like rom-com comfort read too, so you can throw your reading into your TV mix if you want to.
I tend to not read when I'm writing, so I'll watch more. And so in my house for the pandemic, the theme has been regression to like an easier time kind of thing. I won't name which child, but in the early days, I looked over and there was one of my adult children wearing high school sweatpants, a One Direction t-shirt, eating goldfish and watching the Hunger Games. And I was like, what year are we in here? You know? And that's kind of been the theme for the movies too and everything. And it's kind of neat too, because like when Harry Met Sally, I watched that with my daughters and they had never seen it because one wasn't even born probably. You know what I mean? It's like, so they're getting to see it, but that's been Friends. Friends has been a big thing. Like if Friends is on, anybody in my family will just stop and sit down and watch it. That show does really, the humor does hold up. We laugh at the answering machines and all that kind of stuff. But some things don't hold up. And what you were saying about Never Been Kissed, the other night we watched The Wedding Planner with Jennifer Lopez and Matthew McConaughey. And my kids were all like, this is horrible. She should just be with Massimo. Why is he going out with her when he's getting married to somebody else? Like, it was just, yeah. The whole premise of how he meets her and that whole setup was just kind of icky, I believe was the word my children used.
Yeah, I know. J-Lo, what are you going to do? Okay, Sarah, do you have one or a few?
Well, I feel you about the Hunger Games because I blame Midnight Sun coming out because it kind of triggered me wanting to just rewatch all of those movies. So we've done the Hunger Games, we've done Twilight movies, we've done, Divergent series, all of that lately. So that's kind of been a good comfort, but it's not rom-com comfort. I like to binge shows like New Girl, just things that are just a little goofy, a little over top, real fun. Like movies, rom-com movies. I don't know if anybody liked Isn't It Romantic? A lot of people didn't like that movie. And that was just, I thought it was hysterical. Like it was just over the top and I loved it. So that kind of stuff is what I've been watching.
All right, Annabeth.
So like kind of everyone else, I've been watching a lot of stuff with my family, and it's kind of fun to rediscover stuff through the eyes of my 12-year-old. Like we just watched 10 Things I Hate About You, and I hadn't seen it in years, and I was like, there's kind of that doesn't withstand the test of time question, but it's been really fun, and I'd forgotten how much I love just pure comedies, just, One Day at a Time, and The Good Place, and The Babysitter's Club, and just fun 30 minutes with my kids. Like I had forgotten how fun comedies can be, like Big Bang Theory and Young Sheldon and Love, Victor. Like we've just had a lot of fun discovering stuff that we can watch with the kids. And they watched Princess Bride for the first time last night, and like it's such an iconic movie, and it's like, oh, they haven't seen this, we can have a new experience together. But and then I've been rereading a lot of favorite romances, just because rereads are very much a comfort thing. But new authors too. Like I found Jackie Lau's Toronto series. She has just a great rom-com voice, and I've just devoured like everything that she's written. And she has a new one coming in September, and I just can't wait. I pre-ordered it. Like it's always really fun when you find that new author that you just want to glom their whole backlist. Like that's comfort too, like kind of that mix of ones that I've read before but also new, and I get to read all of them, and so that's fun. So,
yeah, or when you discover a series and then you're like, how many are in this? 12? Yes.
Like all 8 in my cart right now.
Yeah, totally. Suzanne, what about you?
I don't reread usually books because I'm such a slow reader. It usually takes me like a month maybe to read a book. So just to reread a book would take a lot of effort too. So I have rewatched shows back like everybody else. It's their comfort, like shows to watch. So speaking of things that didn't age quite well, I watched part of Bridget Jones' Diary, and there are parts there that don't really go fly right now. So that was a little uncomfortable, so I turned that off. But I really enjoyed it a long time ago. I also enjoyed Never Have I Ever. I really loved the freshness of that story. And then I'm trying to think, some of the things that I like to watch are sort of rom-com / coming of age. So I've rewatched Clueless and Legally Blonde, and I think there's one more that I watched. Yeah, basically a lot of the books that I write, the rom-coms, are sort of inspired by the TV style of rom-coms, in that it's usually this, two characters and in a storyline that's partially coming of age, a little bit of romance, and it's just that's what I grew up on. So that's how I think of rom-coms when I think of the term rom-com.
All right. We are going to take we're going to start taking some reader questions that staff has given us. But before, so we can just have a palate cleanser, one thing I asked you all to do, everyone prepare yourself, because I did ask every single one of you to do this, is to come up with your roller derby name. And I will tell you mine at the end, because I actually did roller derby. So I have like a real roller derby name. But I'm ready. I'm waiting for it. Who are we gonna? Anne-Marie, we're starting with you then.
I'm ready.
All right, let's hear it. What's your roller derby name?
There were two that didn't make the cut, but they were book related. Katniss Evermean or Agatha Krusty. I saw those online.
Nice. Good.
But
Good ones.
I have an original one. A lot of my friends call me Anna. And so one of my friends actually suggested this, Annitude.
Oh, I do like that.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah, what have you got?
I studied chemistry in college, and I've been waiting for 17 years to use this name, dimethyl ethyl.
Oh, yes! Oh my gosh, that's
I'd have promo pants with a methyl on each butt cheek. It would be the best costume ever.
Listen, afterwards, I'm going to talk you into actually doing roller derby. You will love it. And then you already have your name ready to go.
Right.
Annabeth, do you have a name? Do you have a derby name?
So I found a really fun roller derby name generator online when you asked the question, and it gave me like a great one, and then I added one from the literary roller derby thing. So Wilma Shakespeare, and I could have my little Bi Pride flag outfit, like all the Bi Pride colors. It would be awesome. So I loved that one. And the generator actually gave me the Shakespeare part, and I was like, yeah, that's me. So yeah, fun.
Perfect. I love it. Suzanne.
In my book, the main character, Nate, he is at school, they call them the Skids. They're scholarship kids. So it's, so I think he would take that name and own it. So that would be his name. But for me, this is sort of, my sister and I are known to procrastinate. And since we both have S as our first initial, would be the Sparkrastinators.
Oh, I like that too. That's fantastic. Miranda, last one.
Okay, I don't understand anything about how this works. I have no clue. So, and this is very stressful for me. So anyway, I gave it to my husband to deal with, and he came up with these names. And so you have to tell me if they're good or not. So they're very amateurish, I would probably say. So he came up with Tennessee Mama and the Nashville Annihilator. And
That's a good one.
Yes,
right,
it's the second one. The second one. I actually had a librarian friend, and her derby name was the Dewey Decimator, and I loved it. I just thought, oh man, it's just so great. So I will tell you my derby name, and then we will get to audience questions. My last name is Desir, so my derby name was Desirial Killer.
Nice.
Awesome.
So yes, that was mine. Okay, so here's the questions for the audience. This one's really good. They're all really good. Sorry, every one is really good. But this one is super juicy. What inspired the relationships in your stories? Were that any of them based on your own romantic lives or your own romantic loves, I guess? Sarah, you have that face, which says to me, don't call on me, so I'm going to go for it.
Well, so I married a man that's basically every romance trope out there. He is a tattooed, single father, ex-military, motorcycle riding construction worker with tattoos. Did I say that?
Was he a male virgin first? Because that would have just brought it all together so beautifully.
No, that was the one thing he didn't have. But so I just kind of laugh at that because I feel like in some way he's going to be in any of my books in some fashion. But no, I think my stories are more, they're more like influenced by situations that have happened to me as opposed to relationships I've been in. I don't immortalize any of my exes in fiction, so lucky for them. But like a lot of the tourist attraction is literary versions of this really. I took a research trip for a different book up to Alaska, and we did all of these excursions, and none of them, a lot of them went awry, and so that's what happened with tourist attraction. Was Zoe's adventures were going awry. So it's more like that than the actual relationships.
Nice. Annabeth.
Oh, obviously my book is two guys, so not quite like real life basis, but my husband and I, we play Magic the Gathering, and we call that our relationship counseling time. We get out our decks, we play, we annihilate each other, and we move past whatever sort of marital stress we've got. So I knew that I wanted to bring that love of tabletop gaming into my book, and so that backdrop. And also, as someone who's neurodiverse, and I have neurodiverse people in my family as well as myself, I wanted to bring that in. And I wouldn't say that's really a romantic thing, but I wanted to reflect that sort of real life thing in the book. And I love cons, I love going to big fan conventions, and so I kind of brought that in. But the relationship itself, that's kind of the characters decided to fall in love. But, you know, real life stuff is fun to get in there, like the card playing and stuff. That's always fun.
Yeah, there was so much great, like, juicy gamer stuff in there. Like, my family's gamers too, so like all the D&D kids, and you know, and it was super fun. There was lots of great things. I'm gonna go down to Anne Marie.
All of my characters are fictional. There's nobody drawn from anything but my, imagination. But I will say this: I have very recently swiped something from a text conversation and used it in the book I'm working on right now. Although I always tell people, somebody sent me a text conversation, and I'm like, that is so going in a book. So
It's awesome. See, be careful, everyone. In the world.
Say it to
we
me,
will
it's
use
fair
your
game.
texts. We will use your texts, right?
I told him right up front, the next line was, that is going in my book.
Nice. Suzanne.
The actual people are kind of like blended of different people I know, not necessarily like one person inspired any one character. As far as a relationship goes, a lot of the things that happen in their relationship were inspired by real things from past experiences. And what I write about in my story is, missed opportunities. And when somebody says something and you don't know if you read that right, and things like that, where somebody's really just kind of stressed out by using their inner voice. Like, am I overthinking this? Did I read that wrong? Maybe he doesn't like me or she doesn't like me. And then the main guy, Nate Kim, the main hero, he actually has a crush on another girl going into the story, which I also think is very realistic for teenagers, where they have multiple people that they kind of are crushing on. And, later on, maybe it works out, but that's just sort of how normal life is back then. I mean, back as a teenager. And so I wanted to make that a thing in the book where it's not a love triangle, but he actually likes another girl as he meets this new girl.
Awesome. Miranda.
So I think, none of the characters in my books are based on anybody, and the relationships aren't either, but I would say that when I was in high school, I feel like most of the boys I knew that were in relationships kind of acted like jerks. Like, I feel like, they just were. I hope none of them are watching right now, but I feel like, a lot of my friends.
They're super evolved if they are.
Yeah.
So it's fine,
They've
really.
come a long way.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. Sure. A lot of my friends, I just remember, like, me and all my friends just being so hurt by like what a lot of the boys in high school would do. And so with my books, the boys in my books, I feel like they act like teen boys. Like I try to make them act like teen boys. And sometimes they are jerks, but what I try to show is the girls realizing like, this is not okay. And I don't have to put up with that. And I'm going to do something else now. So I think it's really important to sort of show that in books. But that being said, I like to show sort of like the aspirational, like what, these boys really should be like and what they should be maturing into. And so they do act like real boys, but they're also pretty respectful most of the time. And if they aren't, then, they learn from their behaviors. So, sorry, I sound like one of those, teen specials on TV after school specials.
No, not at all. And if anything, actually what you did was you created a book that really perfectly shows the evolution, because you gave him 4 years. So you got him like sort of over the course of the 4 years, so that he goes from kind of being a knucklehead to like, at the very end, which is fantastic.
It's been interesting because, it's, so many books we write, like it's just about the characters getting together, but having to write about a couple and all their ups and downs and seeing them be jerks and stuff like that, some people don't want to read about that, I've discovered. So it's kind of interesting.
Oh, okay. So I have one last question, and then we're going to just end this so that you all can go about and have the rest of your days. It's sort of a question that I always end a panel with, but I'm going to incorporate one of the questions from our readers, which is they asked who's your favorite author, and what I would say to you is, can you give us all sort of one recommended book that you're like, this is the book, this is what I would love it if more people read this, or so something that maybe isn't, I don't know, whatever, I'll let you choose, but something that you're like, this is my reco, so that everyone can go out and buy their Bookstore Romance Day books. Sarah, let's start with you.
I have 3. I can't narrow it down to one. I'm currently reading Hate Crush by Angelina Lopez, and it's so good. It is so good. If you haven't read You Had Me at Hola by Alexis Marian, you have to get it. It is so good. And then I just read Wild Country Cowboy by Erin Marsh, and it's super cool because it's cowboys and wolves, and they talk about post-concussion syndrome and that, and it's just a really, really good cowboy book. So those are my 3.
Awesome. Suzanne.
This is such a hard question. My favorite author is Helen Huang. I think if you're new to romance or curious about romance, I think the Kiss Quotient really just has a lot to offer as far as neurodiversity, a female in STEM, and then there's huge steaminess to the actual romance. But I think I learned a lot from reading the book, and then also think it's just a really fast page turner. I'm finishing up the Boyfriend Project with Farah Rashan, and about to start buddy reading the Boyfriend material. Yeah, that's the one.
Alexis.
Yeah. So I'm about to start that buddy read.
Fun. Miranda.
So in terms of YA, I would say Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett. I really like Jen Bennett's books. Let's see, adult stuff. I mean, in the adult romance, I love anything by Samantha Young. I love On Dublin Street. And if we're going historical, I mean, anything by Lisa Clay Pass. Really like her books. I like her contemporary as well. I've done a lot of rereading this year because it's good to know what happens at the end of the book. There's no real stress there, since we have so much other stress.
Yes, it is. When you have that guaranteed happily ever after, I'll tell you, man, sometimes that's like, yes, okay, I know how this one's going to end. Right. I know. Anne-Marie.
Well, as far as what I most recently read, my most recent read was Waiting for Tom Hanks by Carrie Winfrey, and that was just a fun, light read. a lot of references to all the rom-coms that, like, you know, people my age all watch, like we referenced the movies we've gone back to now. So it's kind of timely with that. And then for the book I'll recommend, I'm going to be really dorky here and go total proud mama moment and recommend Frat Girl by Kylie Roach, who is my daughter. It is a book about a girl who her freshman year in college pledges a fraternity. So there's romance, there's feminist issues from both sides of the table. I think it's an enlightened read written by a college student.
Yeah, it's excellent. I blurbed it in a fun way too. So yeah, it's excellent. It's a really great YA. And Annabeth.
So the best thing I read this year is Finding Joy from Adriana Herrera. It is an amazing male-male pairing, LGBTQ. They're in Ethiopia. It is the ambiance, the setting. It is by far the best thing I've read this year. I loved it. Get it. And I have to shout out Suzanne's Perfect Escape because I read it, I loved it. I gave it to my daughter and we had some of our best conversations we've had. And we went from Suzanne's book to Miranda's book, and we've just been bouncing around kind of YA rom-coms. And this is the kid who swore that she didn't like romance at all. And now we're having fun discussions. And so, yeah. So if you want to get a paper book for Romance Bookstore Day, though, you can't go wrong with those two. But for ebooks, Finding Joy, just loved it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Okay, you all, thank you so much. Thank you. I hope everyone is watching this afterwards and feeling like they got a lot out of this. I hope you are all going out to buy these books. Hold up your books. One more time, everyone. Amazing. Do you see they're so good? All of them are so good. Thank you all so much. And thank you for being here with us. And we will all talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.